Hello, everybody. Hope everyone is doing well. Here we are, back at it like a pack at it. Let's go ahead and get to ripping. Today's going to be a little overwhelming. I have a lot to show you guys. However, I want to show you that 96 Jordan box. We also have a 96-97 Upper Decks Collector's Choice that we will go ahead and show all the cards here. Also, I want to give a special shout out to a family member that gave this to me. His name is Devin. You know who you are. I appreciate it. For those of you that are new to the channel, welcome. Please leave a comment, subscribe, and go ahead and tell me what you like from this specific haul. For my old subscribers, you know the deal. Let's go ahead and interact within the comments. I always appreciate each and every one of you. Behind these cards, you do see that they're kind of little podiums. I'll go ahead and put up my personal favorite players, especially Kobe. I grew up watching him as a kid. Michael Jordan, I did not really get to see him during his early career. I saw him more towards the latter when he was playing with the Wizards. Speaking on Jordan, I do enjoy collecting his shoes. The ones that I feel that are most comfortable would be the 1s and the 4s. And here we go, starting off with Shaq. Shaq and Kobe was the pair duo that I enjoyed watching. That's what really started me off with watching basketball. Those two just worked well with each other. I did not like when they kind of split up, when they had that feud going on with each other. I truly feel if they put their egos aside, they would have won multiple championships. But I mean, that's what you get when you got two kind of strong-headed people trying to lead the team. As the old adage goes, there needs to be some sort of balance, a yin and a yang, as they would say. What you're currently seeing on your screen are 5 mini gold cards. They're kind of perforated, so you could rip them easily. However, I went ahead and sleeved them and top-loaded them, being they're about or more than 20 years old. Here we got Steve Nash on his rookie card. Next up, we got on the playbook for the Bulls, Scottie and Michael Jordan. One-on-one, we got Kobe versus Sharif. And that particular pose that you see Kobe doing, it's very iconic to me. It would resemble him kind of lining up to hit the fadeaway or just take on his defender. That was a young Ray Allen. Again, one of my personal favorites, Allen Iverson, and our last kind of mini cards that we have here to kind of wrap up what I felt was worth top loading and sleeving from the Upper Deck Collector's Choice factory set. And next up, we'll rip into these Upper Deck. Looks like it's crunch time that's worded on them. Let's go ahead and take these out, and my apologies for not being able to pronounce some of these names. Here we got Latrell Sprewell. I remember hearing about him choking out his head coach. I think it was PJ. Can't recall the last name, but I know he choked out his head coach. You must really have to dislike your head coach to result into verbal abuse or physical abuse. That was Gary Payton. I know his son plays with the Warriors GP2. Here we got Jerry Stackhouse. I don't think his career really panned out as well. Here we got AI, killer crossover, Clyde the Glide Drexler. Next up, we got Damon Stoudemire. I do remember him with the Blazers. Really, really great shooter. We got Terry Mills. Never heard of you. Next up, we got Reggie Miller. I do know who this is. He's very iconic for doing the choke. Here we got Dale Ellis. And kind of going back to Reggie Miller, I do enjoy when he commentates some sports games. Really gives you the kind of feel of the game. That's something I do really appreciate. Next up, here we got Ronnie. See, I never heard of this person. If you have, please leave a comment down below. Next up, we got Penny Hardaway. Here we got Eddie Jones that played with the Lakers. Vaguely remember him. Next, we got Patrick Ewing. I know he's a total legend. Here we got Mitch Richmond. The cool thing about this, whenever we go to Golden One, I do see his jersey in the rafters. Next up, all-time great passer, John Stockton. Here we got the mailman. Here we got a shooter coming up, Del Curry. The only reason I'm aware of Del Curry, obviously his sons being in the league, Steph and Seth. Who would have thought Steph Curry would have revolutionized the game? I remember when he was in his younger years playing with the Warriors, his ankles were very brittle. So there was really no confidence with him. I know there was a decision either staying with Monte Ellis or Steph, and obviously they went with the latter, being Steph. And I know that was probably a tough decision, obviously, with Steph and or Monte Ellis. I believe at that point Monte Ellis was really balling out. Steph was very injury prone. So it could have gone either way, but look where we are at now. Steph continuing to be a menace in the league. I just love when he hits those threes and turns around. To me, it's very cocky, but he knows his game. And the card that I just put down, Arvydas Sabonis, his son plays on my favorite team, the Kings, Domantas Sabonis. There was somewhere on YouTube, it was kind of a short little video, or maybe it was long, I do not recall, of Arvydas Sabonis. They were saying he was dominant out in Europe. I know when he came over to the Blazers, he was a little bit older, so I'm not really aware of his game. Leave a comment down below. I would really love to know your opinions on Arvydas Sabonis. Now we're moving on to the next kind of display of cards, the FOOTLOCKER Slam Fest. I never heard of these. That was Bo Jackson. Here we got Eric Dickerson. I mean, these cards look really, really old. Here we have Earl Monroe. Next up, we have Elvin Hayes. These are, again, I don't know where you would purchase these. I know it reads FOOTLOCKER. If any of you guys know, please leave a comment down below. And here we have Barry Bonds. In my honest opinion, I love Barry Bonds. Growing up, I just loved the way he swinged. And also, I know a lot of the pitchers were afraid to pitch to him, so they would do an intentional walk. I don't even know if they do that to any of the hitters current day. Maybe I'm just biased because I was born and raised in the Bay Area, but that was a great card to see. After the recording of this video, I did take a look behind the card. It looks like they were actually made in 1991. So again, well before my time. I was born in 93, so if any of you know where you could purchase these during that time, please go ahead and leave a comment down below. I'm pretty sure everyone in the community would love to know where you would be able to purchase this during that time. Here we have a Scottie Pippen. Next up, we have a Dale Ellis. Again, I'm not too familiar with this game. Karl Malone, the mailman, doing his little pose. Oh, we got baseball in here. Here we have Pedro Martinez. I remember watching him with the Boston Red Sox when I was younger. Here we have Fred Lynn. Speaking of Red Sox, next up we got Steve Garvey. I'm not too sure if that's a real signature. Pretty sure it's printed. Here we have on the Brewers, Robin Yount. Looks like we got some NHL or hockey in here. That was Steve Lemire. I used to watch hockey. However, this was when the Sharks would always make it to the playoffs, always choke. I believe the goalie at the time was Steve Nabokov. I'm not too sure his first name. Here we have some football cards. Again, these look really old. I'm really digging them. Here we got Reggie White back in 1991 on the Dream Team. And on the football heroes, we have Joe Naismith. Again, I have a habit of just turning these cards over because they're really, really vintage in my opinion. Hopefully this brings back nostalgic memories for any of you. If so, I would love to hear down in the comments below which one kind of sparked your interest into getting into the hobby. Was it a specific card, specific player? Please let me know. Here we go, moving on with the 96 Jordan collection. We'll go ahead and rip that open, and we'll go ahead and look through these individually. I do have something funny to talk about Jordan, specifically when I was in junior college. We had to write a speech and present it in front of the class. It was 2 minutes that you've had to stand in front of the podium and kind of convey your message to the class. I never taught myself. I know I had a rough draft and everything. I went up and I knew by looking at the clock, I only talked about like a minute or so. So I really had to BS my way, just talk about how he changed his jersey number. So it changed throughout the whole speech. I mean, I ended up getting an A for that class. I mean, A for effort, or probably just showing up every day and doing the work. But yeah, that's kind of my little insight of how I really got to know who Michael Jordan was just because I had to write a speech about him. And just looking at each of these photos, I mean, there's that saying, a picture holds 1,000 words or speaks 1,000 words. And when I look at them, obviously you could tell, I mean, just that one specifically, how hard it was to defend Michael Jordan. I mean, you could see right there, this is back-to-back NBA championships. I know I was talking to Rip and Pax for you about dynasties. Yeah, there hasn't been a dynasty in the NBA for a while. Albeit the Warriors were somewhat of dynasty, but other than that, there hasn't been any other dynasty in the NBA of recently. And when I look into these cards, I mean, I know they're vintage, but it brings back and sparks back a memory for me I don't know if you guys are familiar with the starting lineup collection figures or action figures, whatever they're called. I remember my dad having an abundance of them from the Dream Team, more specifically Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen. So just looking at these brings back wonderful memories. Yeah, these are great to see. And when I see Michael Jordan this young, I recently watched a film. It was titled Air. It's about trying to sign him in his younger years, where he's competing with Adidas, Converse, and Nike. And looking at these pictures and seeing the Nike on his shoes, and thinking of Nike in itself, that just tells me if you're really dedicated to a certain hobby and or passion, and you're willing to put forth the effort and work, great things can come out of it. And I know if the product specifically calls out the 96 collection. However, just reading a title like that, 7 consecutive scoring titles, that tells me that these photos were taken over time and then grouped together, then put within this product. To have a 10 dedicated with only your photos really exemplifies how impactful you were in the NBA or just around the world in general. Let's go ahead and move into the next product. This is the 96-97 NBA Basketball Factory Set from Upper Deck. Let's go ahead and review all the cards within the set. However, I will not say every single name. I will only say and name the ones that are really familiar with me. Like for this one, the playbook, we got Charles Barkley, Clyde the Glide, and Hakeem. To me, I never knew how impactful Charles Barkley was. I only knew him as the analyst that was on TNT. And then when I saw highlights of his career, man, left me speechless. He was an absolute beast. But I love when he gives credit to Tim Duncan. He credits Timmy as being the greatest of all time in the power forward position, and I cannot 100% agree with Charles Barkley. Tim Duncan, the fundamentals, he just knew how to play the game the right way. And growing up, as I mentioned, the team that I followed were the Lakers, and every single year I know they always had to play the Spurs. It's one team I really disliked as a kid just because they were a tough opponent. And as Kobe said, if they didn't have to verse them, obviously they would have won more championships. We got Stephon Marbury. I remember watching him as a kid as well. There we got the Clippers playbook. I know they got a stadium opening up soon, so that would be really interesting to see. Here we got Rick Fox. Myself personally, I never knew Rick Fox played with the Celtics. I only thought he played with the Lakers, so I was pretty shocked to see that he had a Celtics jersey on. Here we got John Stockton. Man, I know he never won a ring. Karl Malone never won a ring. I know Karl Malone in his later years tried to come to LA with Gary Payton, 2004. I remember specifically because they formed somewhat of a super team, but that year the Detroit Pistons surprisingly ended up being the world champions. That honestly hurt me because, again, I was following the Lakers, and when they ended up winning the Pistons, it hurt. Since LeBron has been a Laker, arguably one of the greatest players to ever play the game, doesn't hit the same. Kobe is obviously my GOAT. That's someone that I grew up watching. However, when I started watching the Kings, they just sparked that interest in me again. They played fast pace. They do something every time they win. They light the beam, and I'm able to see that from where I live, so I think it's very cool. I just really get behind the team. Next up, we have Roy Rogers. The only reason I'm calling him out is because that Memphis Grizzly logo that was on his jersey. There was a time in the NBA, I believe it was 2020, correct me if I'm wrong, the Raptors and the Grizzlies threw it back for one of their games for their jerseys. I thought that was really cool for those franchises to display their older jerseys for kind of the newer fans of the NBA. It just goes to show that newer fans still respect the retro jerseys. And the previous card that I put down, Derek Fisher, I just remember him pairing so well with Kobe. They entered the league the same year. They won multiple championships together. There's one iconic moment that I do remember as a kid watching Spurs and the Lakers going at it. Timmy D hits an insane shot. There's zero point 0.4 seconds left, I mean, the rest is history. Derek Fisher turns around, makes a shot, and they're running off the courts. Sorry, Shoffs. I know that moment probably hurt. Next up, we got Jermaine O'Neal. I know this young fella had Malice in the Palace with, who was it, Steven Jackson, Ron Artest. I remember seeing that coming home. That was on Sports Center. To me, that was kind of the show to watch back in the day, was Sports Center and tuning in to see the top 10 plays of the week. This was before YouTube, so you had to wait to see what were the top plays of that week. What I would do, I would see the score ticker on the bottom, see what teams won, and then I think later on in the night they would show the top 10 plays. It was really something to keep up with. And to be honest, I don't really tune in to watch SportsCenter anymore. I mean, I pretty much watch all my highlights on YouTube. That's my route that I go. However, let's kind of continue and go back into these cards. We got Joe Dumars, part of the Bad Boys. BJ Armstrong, I remember him playing with MJ. I believe it was part of that whole team. Here we have Christian Laettner. I know his college career for the Duke Blue Devils is widely regarded as one of the best in NCAA history. However, I know it did not really pan out or transition well into the league. That in itself just tells me how difficult it is to really get acclimated into the league and to see if you'll actually prosper. Here we got Antonio McDyess, Theo Ratliff for the Pistons, Craig Elo. If I do recall and my memory serves me well, I believe Jordan hit a game-winning shot over him. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that name rings a bell. Here we have Michael Cage, and as you can see, I'm kind of struggling. These cards, I think they are stuck together. I'll go ahead and peel that off. Next up, we got Mashburn. And to my amazement, with these cards being over 20 plus years old, not as many are as stuck to each other. I've seen multiple videos where they open 92, around the 90s era, a lot of cards being stuck behind one another. However, with these cards, they look pretty pristine and immaculate in my own personal opinion. Here we got Bob Sura. The next person, we got Popeye Jones. That's a pretty dope first name. Here we got Abdul Rauf. The way I found out about him personally was playing video games. His 3-point shooting was just off the charts, so I spammed him like crazy. I think I played a lot with him in 2K, but he was one of the most overused player that I would use to just spam everybody shooting the threes. I know players typically left the game when they saw you had a certain team built. So kind of taking it back into the gaming aspect, if you were able to have VC, what they called it, I'm not too sure what it's abbreviated for, you could build somewhat of a super team. And opponents typically hate when you had super teams, and they would usually just quit the game. I know I would have left. Here we got Penny Hardaway. There was a podcast that I stumbled upon. I believe it's with Evan Turner and Andre Iguodala. He did mention that he was some bit of jealous with Kobe and Shaq. He was saying that the Magic team was just too young, and if they stayed together, that they would have won multiple championships. Again, I'm not really too familiar with Penny's game. I believe he was very injury prone, so he did not get to display the talents that he was capable of, so I believe injuries kind of held him back. I went ahead and just put down the Admiral. Here we got Chris Smolin. We got a young Zoe. These cards are insanely cool. They're the NBA fundamentals. I took a look at it myself and I turned it around. There's actually a word search behind all these cards. I could appreciate the fact that Upper Deck was taking the initiative to really engage people into their product. And I know nowadays companies don't really engage consumers as much into their products. Companies are more so of the bottom dollar, generating revenue. So it's kind of a different ball game compared to when companies really wanted their consumers to interact with them. I've seen multiple videos on YouTube where consumers would actually open a pack, and while they open that pack, they receive some sort of card to mail something in. In a way, it was a mail-in rebate. You send it in, and then you would receive something back from the company. I don't think any companies are doing that nowadays. If they are, I mean, I'm not too familiar which companies still kind of offer that program. Here are a few Bulls players. That was Steve Kerr, Dennis Rodman, Ron Harper, Tony Kukoc. These are a few of the Bulls players that I'm actually familiar with. Here we got Vlade Divac. I know he was traded for Kobe, and the rest is history. Kobe lasted 20 years with the Lakers. Here we have a young KG putting his hand on Muggsy Bogues' head. That was Hakeem the Dream Olajuwon. Next up, we got John Stockton, Jalen Rose, part of the, I believe it was called the Fab Five in Michigan, where they started that whole new trend. That was pretty cool to see. Here we got Penny again, Hardaway, Gary Payton, the glove as they would call him. And there's one specific highlight that I love rewatching. Jason Williams, or aka White Chocolate, did against Gary Payton when he kind of did like a hezzy crossover, and you just see Gary Payton look back with his face in shock. That was an iconic moment as well. I really enjoyed that one. And right here, you see kind of like the Toronto Raptors jacket. I do love the design of their jerseys. I happen to have a an old school T Mac jersey with the Raptors on it. Kind of brings me to my next topic: why the Raptors never or have not retired Vince Carter's jersey yet, but the Brooklyn Nets are doing it first. Kind of makes me wonder. I mean, he had his start at the Raptors. I know he was more impactful with the Nets, but yeah, I'm not too sure why. Maybe it's a low blow. Maybe the Raptors will realize that Vinsanity really was half man, half amazing. And to back up Vince's case, he is the only player to play 22 seasons. However, I mean, that will change because of LeBron. The way LeBron has been playing, he plays like he's still young. And the recent news, he was just announced into the All NBA team, making it for 20 consecutive years, which is just an absolute crazy stat. That just shows you the longevity with LeBron and how much further he could go into playing. I know his biggest concern is to play with the son. He's been knocking it off recently as I really don't want to play with them. But we all know that's just a facade, and he would relish the opportunity to play with his son. I know there's been a lot of father and son duos in the NBA. Clay and his father, Joe and Kobe Bryant, Rick Brunson and Jalen Brunson. However, I do not believe there has been a father and son duo that actually played together with each other in the same era. I know that Ken Griffey Jr. and Ken Griffey Sr. shared the same field with each other. Being a parent myself, just sharing the field with your own son and or daughter was probably a numbing feeling. However, let's go ahead and get back into these cards. I have a fat stack. Here we have Sean Elliott. Next up, we got Detlef Schrempf for the Supersonics. The Supersonics, in my opinion, had one of the cleanest jerseys as well and still do. I don't know why they relocated that team to OKC. Maybe it's whole business management behind the scenes. However, if they have the opportunity to relocate or expand into that city again, I think it would be a great opportunity and business decision just because it is a really beautiful city. Here we got Kerry Kittles for the Nets. Next up, we got John Wallace for the Knicks, Bob Hurley for my Sacramento Kings, and a very young Michael Finley. My memory about Michael Finley is when he was with the Dallas Mavericks. That Dallas Mavericks team in the early 2000s was a force to be reckoned with. I believe they had Sean Marion, Steve Nash. I forgot other individuals that played, but I know they gave a lot of teams trouble. And to me, that begs the question why a lot of players nowadays are more likely to request a trade rather than fix any obstacles or hurdles that are within the organization. I know this kind of translates into the real world as well. A lot of folks are not committed to one company. They work X amount of years and retire. It's more so hopping from job to job to increase their salary. So maybe that's why players are doing the same thing, just they want a better pay. There we have Juwan Howard. I know he is coaching, I believe, Michigan's college team. It's kind of full circle for him because he was an actual player there and part of the Fab Five. However, the video that I saw of him, I mean, it's been months, where he slapped the opposing head coach's uh, team. And I think there was some sort of altercation. I forgot what the incident was about, but just seeing that, uh, you got to have some self control and accountability. I'm unsure if the NCAA enforced any ramifications against his actions. If they did, it probably did not surface. Maybe because he's an ex player, but still, ex player or not, you still have to hold the individual accountable. Just so an expectation is set, and other coaches don't have the same luxury to do that to an opposing head coach and or player. Here we have Anthony Goldwire. This Charlotte team, I believe, had Muggsy Bogues and Grandmama, what they called him, Larry Johnson. Larry Johnson, again, I'm familiar with him just because of 2K, but playing with him in 2K, he was an elite dunker. And if you were to ask me, do I still play 2K in today's world? No, I do not. I feel that the game fell off substantially hard. It's just the same thing over and over again. There's really no new way to engage players. So I haven't played it in over a decade or so, but I know they still have a very strong following and fan base. While I go ahead and grab this other stack to show you guys, and if you made it this far, bearing my voice, I want to thank you immensely. Here we go. Starting off, I'm not too sure who that was, but Mark Jackson, I am well aware of. I feel like individuals and our folks do not give the credit that Mark Jackson deserves. He was the one that really orchestrated and kind of constructed that whole Warriors roster. It just happened to be that Steve Kerr was handed that plate, and from there, people again, you got to give credit when credit's due. I feel like Mark Jackson should have a coaching role in the NBA as of now, but I believe he's only doing analyst work. So we'll see what team does pick him up. And I'm surprised no teams are interested. However, that was Robert Horry. That was Big Shot Bob. There was one shot against the Sacramento Kings. I believe that's when the Kings had their run going to the finals. That's where Tom or Tim Donahue was placing bets on NBA teams and kind of rigging the NBA, and he ended up getting caught for it. But I believe that year, the Sacramento Kings, with that whole roster with Mike Bibby, Chris Webber, Vlade Divac, Peja Stojakovic. Forgot who the other individual was, but I believe they had Bobby Jackson coming off of the bench. They had a very, very good chance of winning a championship that year. We have D Brown, and I know with D Brown, when he participated in the dunk contest, he kind of did the no look. But after seeing how every year the dunk contest has revolutionized or evolved in a way, that would be considered like a 7 or 8 dunk. The reason I say it's very low, if you've seen Aaron Gordon and Zach LaVine go at it, in my opinion, Zach LaVine was, or excuse me, Aaron Gordon was robbed of winning the dunk contest. If you watch those dunk videos on YouTube of them going at it, absolutely insane. And I don't know how doing a through the legs dunk from the free throw line scores higher than dunks that we've never seen in the All Star or the dunk contest, which kind of baffled me at that moment. I'm like, how is Aaron Gordon and Zach LaVine going at it when Aaron Gordon is doing dunks in the dunk contest that has never been seen before, but they're getting the same scores? To me, that was just absolutely insane. I just feel Aaron Gordon should participate again in the dunk contest, but I do understand why his mind is kind of tainted a little with the judges and their scoring. And here we go. We're rounding down our cards. We got Avery Johnson. We got Nate McMillan. I believe he was a head coach or is or was with the Hawks. Next up, we got Chuck Morris. And going back to Nate McMillan, I think players that turn into coaches, that says a lot about that individual, that they really know the game well. But now that I think of it, a lot of coaches ended up playing the point guard position. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'll go ahead and display the remaining of these cards. However, if you made it this far and you enjoyed what you saw or seen, please go ahead and hit the subscribe button, leave a comment down below, and most importantly, go ahead and like the video. And if you would like to share it with a friend, family member, that would be very much appreciated. I wish you well, and I hope you have a great rest of your day whenever you are watching this. Thank you.